didn't want to start talking and then it just jumped out at me. I thought I'd mention I'm also an Outer East Portland Centennial neighbor as well. I don't live as close to the park as many of you all, but of course it's going to be an awesome investment. And so I will definitely be affected by it as well. So I am going to pass it to maybe the parks and then PBOT, since PBOT's going to be leading the presentation. How about Maya?
Hi everyone, Maya Spencer. I'm a senior community engagement coordinator with Portland Parks and Recreation. So I've been working on the Park Lane Park development project since it got started. And then Sandra was here, but she just literally disappeared. She might be having a connection problem. Oh, there she is.
I'm here.
She's in her car, I think. Or,
yeah.
There you are.
Hi everybody, I'm Sandra Bertzos. I'm the capital project manager for Park Lane Park right now, the project that's going on. So yeah, I'm coming back from a little vacation, so I'm in transit.
Thanks for being here. Nicole?
I'm Nicole Pierce. I'm a capital project manager with PBOT, and I am the project manager for the 4M Neighborhood Greenway project. And then I will also be the project manager for the Park Lane Park Local Improvement District project, which is not part of the park, but on the edges of the park. And you'll hear more about that from me later. And then my colleague is with me, Gabe.
Hey folks, Gabe Graff. I'm also a capital project manager for the Portland Bureau of Transportation. And I am filling in on the East Portland Access to Employment and Education project. Our previous project manager moved, so I'm filling in for him.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. I will say one more thing. I have a little one who might run into the room, so please bring your full selves. If you need to eat, it's dinner time, if a little one or an animal runs by, we will not judge you. So please bring your full self to this meeting. And I will pass it back to the PBOT team to kick things off.
Awesome. Thank you so much for hosting, sort of facilitating that round of introductions. We really appreciate it. Nicole, did you want to share your screen? Do you want me to do that?
Oh, can you do it? Sorry.
Yeah, I can totally do it. I'm going to just bring up a slide. We want to keep the sort of like the PBOT talking portion pretty brief, so we have lots of time for conversation. But we did put together some slides just so you could visually see what's happening and just talk through what's sort of the discussion topics for today. While I'm bringing up and sharing my screen, I did think we did talk about if folks have particular items they want to hear about, questions they want to make sure they get answered, or things they want to accomplish during this meeting. If you want to throw those in the chat right now while we're sort of like gearing up, that would just help us make sure that we're not, we're not skipping over anything that's really important, or make sure that we can get to what you want to. And I see that I'm not allowed to screen share, so maybe the owner of the meeting, I'm not sure who that is, could turn that on for me. Thanks, Karen. Ooh, look at that. All right, I think I've got permissions. Can you see this picture of downtown Portland?
No.
I'm not seeing anything yet. Oh, there we go. I think it's loading now.
Yep.
Perfect.
Cool. And let's see. Okay. So yeah, if you've got things that you want to make sure that we talk about today, please pop those in the chat. Let's see, can I see the chat at the same time? All right. So big thanks to Rosewood Initiative for hosting and sort of setting this up and getting the word out. Thanks to Karen for sort of instigating. Yeah, like I said, we've just got a few slides to share, but we want to save the bulk of the time this evening for conversation. We'll do brief project updates on the 3 projects that are in the neighborhood. Talk about some project changes we made based on the feedback we received, the petition we got. Talk about some upcoming opportunities for engagement, and ask sort of for community perspective on how we can do a better job going forward in terms of engagement from the community. And then just open it up for question and answer. So any questions you have, we'll do our best to answer them. If we don't have the answer this evening, we'll take note of it and get back to you so that we can get those questions answered. All right, I see some folks putting some stuff in the chat, which is great. Let's go ahead and start on these project updates. So, I'm now the host. I'm just going to let somebody in. So the three projects that we're going to mainly focus on today are all in the Centennial neighborhood, and we made this like new color-coded overview map just to try and make it as clear as we can. So we've got this East Portland Access to Employment and Education project. That's the green line. And it's a series of improvements throughout East Portland. It's already been in construction. Much of the construction is done. Our contractor was on pause for the winter, but is gearing up to finish the construction starting the next couple of weeks, and should be done by this summer. The next project that we've got on the map is in pink. It's the 4M Neighborhood Greenway. That construction will begin in the late spring of 2022 and go through early 2023. And then the final project that we've got on the map is this, I guess, a light blue, and it's just the V that you see at the very bottom of Park Lane Park, and that's the Park Lane Park Local Improvement District project, and that construction will occur in 2023. I just want to acknowledge some of the feedback that we received on these projects, particularly around Park Lane Park. We got this petition that was signed by many neighbors with concerns about request to delay the project because of concerns around the removal of on-street parking, concern about public documents, like the accuracy and transparency of our information, sort of a lack of direct communication or access to staff, and a desire to have sort of a meaningful dialogue about how the project could be improved, redesigned to better prioritize safety. So that's sort of why what we're hoping to do today is to sort of be that direct conduit, give you accurate information, answer your questions, and talk about how we've redesigned some of the project elements to address some of these concerns. Can I turn it over to you, Nicole, to talk about this slide?
Sure, you sure can.
Awesome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sabrina. Thanks, Karen. Thanks, Gabe. So we do have some good news to share this evening in terms of some changes we've been able to make based on input we received from the community. We're going to be partnering with parks to add walking/biking path along the south edge of Park Lane Park. And that's the Park Lane Park Local Improvement District that Gabe mentioned. On this map, it's the kind of darker blue V at the bottom of Park Lane Park. And that new plan actually allows us to preserve the parking on the park side of Main Street along Park Lane Park. So that stretch where it's turquoise, there'll be parking on the park side of the street and no parking on the opposite side of the street. And then based on what we heard from the neighbors, we will be installing speed bumps on Southeast Mill, Main, and Main along the 4M route. And those speed bumps will reduce speeding and really make it safer for everyone out there. Also, oh, did I hear a woo? Yay. Yay, speed bumps.
Yes.
And as part of the original 4M project, we'll be building a short segment of sidewalk on the north side of Main, and that's between 157th and Main. It's shown there in green. I know there's a lot of colors on this map, but yeah. Let's see. So, as you know, Park Lane Park and the two schools right there are important destinations, and these projects are really just trying to make it safer for people to get there, whether they're walking or on their bikes. And as you probably also know, the street network in your neighborhood is disconnected, right? So it's not a nice, neat grid. So we kind of had to get creative and sort of shoehorn these neighborhood greenway projects in a bit. So, but we're trying our best to make it safe to walk or bike in your neighborhood, whether it's to a soccer game in the park or with your kids to school. Next slide. So this is a cross section for the Park Lane Park Local Improvement District project. It's getting down into the weeds a bit, but here's a cross section showing what Southeast Main along the park will look like when that walking/biking path is completed. So as I mentioned, there'd be parking on the park side, and then we'll have a 12-foot wide walking and biking path, and that 4.5-foot furnishing zone where we will probably be planting some trees. It'll depend on the canopy cover from the existing trees, but you should expect at least a handful of trees along that frontage. Next slide. And this is another cross section. So this one looks very similar, but this is Mill Main. So this is what Mill Main will look like, again, with parking on the park side of the street, and the multi-use path on Mill Main will be 11.5 feet wide. So, okay, next slide. All right, so some upcoming opportunities for engagement. If you want to add your email address to the chat, we will add you to our construction email update list for all of these projects. Or if you'd rather, you can sign up by visiting our project websites, which we'll show on the next slide. And also, we wanted to let you know that we'll be having a traffic safety event sometime soon, somewhere in your neighborhood, to be determined, maybe at the Rosewood Initiative, Sabrina, if you'd be up for that, where we'll be distributing some free traffic safety yard signs. So if you're interested in one of those signs, please note that in the chat and we will keep you in the loop. And let's see, as Gabe mentioned at the beginning, we tried to keep this presentation short so we would have plenty of time for conversation and for you to ask questions. And we're also really interested to hear from you your ideas about the best way to get project input from your community for future transportation projects in the Centennial neighborhood. So go ahead and feel free to share that in the chat if you'd like, or we can talk about it as well. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of our oh, next slide. Gabe has our the websites and the contact information for myself and Gabe, and we can send out this presentation tomorrow if you guys would like a copy of it. So I don't know, Gabe, have you been tracking those comments in the chat? Do we want to jump in with those?
I'm happy to also look in the chat too, if that's helpful. But I guess I'll just say, it sounds like you all received the, community feedback and concerns. So I think that was definitely pointed out up front, which is important to note. And some of the things that I saw was that we're looking to add speed bumps, preserving some of the parking. I'm not sure if that all the on-street parking, but preserving some of the parking while adding paths for people to bike and to walk to the park, recognizing that, people get to the park in many different ways. Adding new trees as well. Those are some of the big things that I heard, especially in response to the neighbors' concerns and feedback that they had. So just kind of wanted to point that out. Gabe, do you want to go through the chat? Would you prefer I go through the chat?
I'm happy to give it a stab.
Okay, cool.
So maybe I'll just take a stab at some of the questions that we got already, and then we can just kind of open it up for conversation, if that sounds good to you, Sabrina.
Yep, sounds great.
Cool. So the first question was where the speed bumps will be. So I pulled up this map one more time. And Nicole, correct me if I'm wrong, but the speed bumps will be on Southeast Mill Main, and Southeast Main. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, and I think some speed bumps just recently went in on the other, the street names are a little confusing here, but the part of Southeast Maine that heads west from Park Lane Park recently got some speed bumps, I believe.
Correct.
They've been great. We used to have a lot of people do donuts at the intersection of Main Street and Mill Main. And since the speed bumps have come in, they've completely stopped.
Awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
The next question was about existing trees on Main Street remaining.
Yes.
Go ahead,
So,
Nicole.
we are going to definitely protect all of those trees, those mature trees in the park. Those are for sure going to stay. And then we just may be adding some additional trees if there's space, you know. I guess and Sandra could maybe speak to this, although she's driving, so we won't bother her. But the existing trees are pretty mature and their canopy is pretty broad. So we would only plant trees where it makes sense to kind of fill in the canopy, but not too close to the other trees. So we have someone from urban forestry who's on the team who will advise us about where to plant those trees.
That was also my question. I also had an additional question about what the ground cover may look like. I was just curious if you have any examples of what that planting strip may look like. I live directly across the park, so it'd be nice to know what we're going to be looking at every day.
Yeah, so the Park Lane Park LID project, local improvement district project, is just now starting design. So I don't know yet exactly what that's going to look like, but some preliminary conversations with parks. I think other than where there'll be tree wells for the new trees, but otherwise it may just be paved, just so the parks maintenance folks don't have to deal with weeds and stuff there. So that's the current plan, but like I said, we haven't even started design yet, so more to come on that.
Is there a particular outcome or thing we should be thinking about, Jenny?
Well, I mean, I think it would be nice if it were planted. That's just my opinion, because I have to look at it every day.
Yeah.
But if you flip quickly to that section of the street section, I did have a question about the sidewalks there, and I was wondering if there was going to be sidewalks on both sides of the street on Southeast Main. So where it says 10-foot planting strip, 10-foot sharrow, 10-foot sharrow, is the 10-foot planting strip on the left, is that personal property or is that in it?
Yeah, so that is, I think it's within the city's right of way, but we are not going to be developing that. So the sidewalks and multi-use paths will only be on one side of the street.
On the park side.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Putting on my design hat on, I'm a designer by day, and I do work with a lot of landscape architects. And if I could just add my 2 cents about adding that, planting strip between the parking space and the multi-use path, I think that would be really great. Just aesthetically, if there's going to be all that paving there, it'd be nice to break it up with some greenery. That's all.
Awesome. Always nice to have a landscape architect on the team. I'm just going back to the chat here. Let's see. So we talked about where the speed bumps were, but I think we got another question. Do we get it? Yes. So one of the questions Rob asked, please elaborate more on the speed bumps. Originally, they said they would not be part of the Mill Main. So that's true, but we've changed it based on the feedback that we got. So we are now adding speed bumps on Mill Main and also Mill Main. Is that right, Nicole?
Mill, Main, and Main. Yeah, basically through, on Mill and then through the curve and then out to 162nd. And we actually have already put speed bumps on Main between 162nd and 174th. Those went in pre-pandemic, I don't know, a while ago.
All right, let's see. Will there be sidewalks on both sides of Main Street? And so we answered that no. Why are the houses on Mill Main Drive losing their street parking? Peter asked. On Mill Main Drive, losing their street parking. Do you want to take that one, Nicole? That's this yellow section, yeah, that we're talking about?
Yeah. So that section of Mill Main is where two neighborhood greenways overlap. So we have the 150s neighborhood greenway going north-south and the 4M neighborhood greenway going east-west. How it's been explained to me is that there were two factors in wanting to have, so the reason we need to get rid of parking there is so we can have wider buffered bike lanes. And we're actually, if we can find funding, we may add some physical protection for those bike lanes. So some kind of concrete separators or something. I don't know if we'll have money for that, but that's something that's kind of on the nice to have list. So because it's where the two neighborhood greenways overlap, we wanted it to be a little safer. And my understanding is that the 150s, I'm more familiar with the 4M neighborhood greenway, but my understanding is that the 150s neighborhood greenway is, in general, for its length, has a very low number of cars on it. And so this crossing of Mill Main will be kind of the busiest section of that neighborhood greenway. So, in order to encourage people who feel comfortable on those other low volume streets where there aren't as many cars, we wanted to make that piece extra safe so it didn't prohibit them from getting out and using that. And then the other thing I've heard the engineers say about that spot is that the way the curve is there, that in order to have good sight distance for cars to see folks on bikes, we needed to remove all that parking.
We've got a bunch of additional questions, but also a couple raised hands. So I propose we just go to the raised hands and I'll come back to the questions in the chat. And I saw Peter's first.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, but that you mentioned the orange part was the no parking on either side, but the red part, like north of Southeast Main Street, that also will have no parking on the non-park side. Is that right, on the street?
That is correct. So
all those houses there will lose all their street parking, right?
Well, I'm fairly certain all of those houses have driveways, and then they can park across the street on the park side. But yes, they'll be losing the parking directly in front of their house.
Yeah, that side, just the side of the park side where the parking is pretty full, for when you run from Main Street up to the end of the park, it's usually full of cars, and especially, when you get to the summer and everything, it's packed. And then there's we get RVs and semi trucks that park there as well and take up, a good portion of it as well. So there's not really much available parking on that side on any given day. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. I think, one thing that we also can continue to work on with you folks is the parking signage along the street. So when we do have limited parking, if there's particular restrictions or things that would support the park use and also support the nearby residents, balance that, we're certainly open to it. I saw Jeremy also had his hand raised, and apologize for the background noise. I got my kids running around.
Yeah, life happens. So I have two issues with the no parking on both sides of the street. One is that in my roughly decade of being deeply involved in city policy, including being co-chair of several East Portland Action Plan, at no point was it ever mentioned that there would be taking away parking on both sides of the street. Because if there would have, I would have issued a block consensus from EPAP, because it removes flexibility by all means, yes, I want to encourage how to support people biking on the street. But I have a very simple problem. Like, okay, as a homeowner, if I want to have any work done on my house, where are the contractors parking? You're not fitting contractor trucks and needing their gear in my driveway. That's not happening. So I don't know if other options were looked at. So no parking during typical school hours. So no parking when the kids are going either direction in the morning or the afternoon to and from the school. And I mean, there's all sorts of, if you remove parking on both sides of the street, sorry, I'm not adding density, that you're removing that as an option. So I get budgets are tight. You have to be making trade-offs, but this was the letter that was sent out about this was bordered on obfuscation rather than community announcement. So I understand you have to make decisions, but this feels like a design that it's really heavy-handed and it's a 20-mile-an-hour street. Unless you're going to be having hundreds or thousands of bikes making that corner, I don't see the benefit of removing parking. Thank you. Check.
Thanks, Jeremy. I see Rob's got his hand raised.
Yeah, I would just like to second that. Right now, there are a lot of houses that have multifamily or extended families living there that already use street parking and already use their front yard to park their cars in because they don't have enough parking. So I'm afraid that once you take away that street parking, you're just going to turn this into a tobacco road where you're going to have people parking all over their front lawns because they have nowhere else to park their cars. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous taking, most people I think moved to this area for what this area has to offer. If they wanted to live somewhere with no parking, they would have moved to an apartment. So I second everything that was said about removing the parking. I think it's completely wrong. I know the original plan for this showed that there would be at least parking on one side of the street, which I wasn't really good with that, but hey, sometimes you have to, suffer a little bit, but no parking, that is just a ridiculous option. I don't consider it even an option. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Are you also in this sort of orange section here where you're living?
Yes.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for sharing that. Peter, did you want to jump in again? I see your hand.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to take my hand down. I'll do it now.
All right. I'm gonna jump back to the chat and then we can kind of open it up for more conversation. Let's see. Talked about speed bumps. Karen asked about clarifying the cross section we looked at, which I think would be one of these. If the LID hasn't started design. So I think the short answer to that one, and Nicole, you can clarify, is that we've agreed on this concept of having a multi-use path in the park along the southern border of the park, but haven't drawn it up. This diagram represents that, but that's kind of as far as we've got.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Karen?
Yeah, I'd call that maybe a concept design to just kind of, start the conversation. I don't think the dimensions are going to change because it's pretty limited amount of space, but, and, we're working with the Parks Bureau, so we need to come to a place where we can agree with them about how to use that space. So yeah, concept design.
Related to the park question was a question from John about barriers blocking access for motor vehicles accessing the park. And that's probably a question for our friends at Parks. I think there will be, I feel like I've seen a design that shows vehicle access into the park once it's constructed, but I'm not certain. That's it.
Right, this is Sandra, the Parks Project Manager. Yeah, we're going to have a parking lot in the park, so there'll be a vehicular access there. Does that answer the question?
I think the question is actually about whether there will be barriers blocking access for motor vehicles from accessing the park, not facilitating that access.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we'll have the ability to close off the parking lot, you know, just right at the driveway.
Currently, this is Charlene. I live across from the basketball court. So we have seen not too long ago, like a month ago, a car stuck in the middle of the park because they were in doing cookies in it. We have four-wheelers, we have motorcycles, all going into the grassy area and driving and tearing up the lawn. So, and right now we have rocks, but they aren't stopping smaller vehicles. So
Yeah, we'll have to, if we have that kind of problem, we'll have to add more of the boulders.
yeah, that's fine. Just there seems to be a lot more use by the four-wheelers and the motorcycles directly on the green space. And I think the baseball diamond there is also a draw, people driving in the dirt there. So
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that. Sounds like we've got some good input for the park design. Let's see. You also mentioned the speeding and drag racing on Southeast Main Mill Drive. Sounds like the speed bumps have helped that we've installed so far. Hopefully the additional speed bumps we've added to this project will further curtail that. Tracy asked, how will the streets be swept if concrete barriers are put in? Right now, I don't think we have any concrete barriers in any of the plans. The multi-use path that we've got on the south side of the park will be sort of sidewalk level. So I wouldn't expect too much debris in that.
So I did mention the possibility of adding protection on the Mill Main piece. We actually, PBOT has a sweeper that's, Gabe, how narrow is the mini sweeper?
Oh, I think it goes down to 4 feet.
Yeah, so that we do have the ability to sweep protected bike lanes.
And can I just point
Please.
out real quick, I saw in one of the questions talking about long-term parking in terms of RVs, semi-trailer trucks. If I'm not mistaken, from the information I've gathered from the city, is that is something that's bigger than the Bureau of Transportation, meaning that the city is not, if this is still in effect, not like moving vehicles that people may be living in. I know it was related to COVID, but do you all know more about that? Because I know that's around the city in terms of RVs and camps, and I think the city's not sweeping those or not doing anything about those while people are living in them. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, as everyone probably is aware, we're in the midst of a horrific housing crisis, and we've got and homelessness is affecting all parts of our city, and we've got lots of people who are living in vehicles, you know, that it's for staff, for transportation staff, you know, the rules around what's allowed and what we're doing, what we can and can't do has been evolving. So I don't have the latest and greatest. It looks like Maya has put in the abandoned auto. So if there is, you know, if you do have if there's a current issue, I can point you to some resources that may be of help, and then we can also sort of think about what the park is. This is what I was going to the parking program, like what the parking signs say, what kind of parking is allowed. So
I would like to add, again, we've had a lot of the motor homes by the basketball court, and I have twice filed a complaint with PBOT, and I have to commend them for how promptly they've been out here. And as of just last week, we had a motorhome and a boat and another motorhome, and they came out quickly and took care of it, and my street is empty. So I want to commend them on responding.
oh, thanks. I'm glad our colleagues were on that for you. Yeah, we've got, I think, I don't know, something like a third of the folks who normally do parking enforcement are now totally focused on these issues. So it's been quite an adjustment. Let's see. I see a couple more hands raised. Rob, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I was just, do you have the breakdown? Because the screen that you have currently, you say Mill Main Drive along Park Lane Park. Do you have the breakdown of what Mill Main, the breakdown of what Mill Main will look like? Because
let's see, this for the
Yeah.
orange section.
Yes.
What do you think, Nicole? Do we have a better
Yeah.
graphic for that?
I don't have a good graphic for that.
Okay.
I can have my engineer put one together.
Okay, do you know what it's going to look like, and can you just like decipher or show from one of those other ones what the differences would be?
Sure. Actually, I have the engineering drawings open. I can read off of them directly if I can find the right sheet. So yeah, why don't we take a couple more questions and come back to that while I find the striping plan?
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, I see your hands up.
Yeah, so based on one of the previous diagrams that I believe Nicole shared, this was probably 5 months ago. So my understanding is the bike lanes would be on the curbs, and there would be like basically kind of filling in the buffer with just kind of void space on both sides of the street, and kind of tapers around because it's a curve and things get weird. So my hi baby. So my concern is that no self-respecting bicyclist is going to ride on the shoulder on a 20-mile-an-hour street, particularly when all the gravel that is dumped is in basically the area that the bike lane is supposed to be. So unless every time a gravel truck comes through for ice, that a sweeper comes through and clears it, the bike lanes are going to be full of gravel. And two, my section now, thankfully, I think it was PBOT, or no, it was BDS came out and put in an extra storm day to do some work, because I referred to the actually roughly the orange stretch as Lake Mill Main, because whenever you get a heavy downpour, basically the entire street would flood. Now it's definitely been better since the work they've done, but it's still basically the area where you're going to be putting the bike lanes that I don't think anybody will actually use, actually regularly has water coming well out into that area. So you're going to basically, my opinion is parking is going to be turned off, and people's behaviors are not going to change in the slightest for where they're going to walk and bike. So check.
Thanks, Jeremy.
I saw a question in the chat about why bike lanes and not sharrows through that section of Mill Main, and I wanted to address that. And the situation with the 4M route, it's between Stark and Division, two high volume traffic streets, and it's because you guys have that disconnected grid out there. It's one of the only east-west streets that actually goes through, which means that cars want to use it, but that it's also the only straight way to get bikes through. So when we were in the process of designing this project, PBOT has some standards about how many cars per day you can have on a street, and what kind of, so if you're going to have sharrows on a street, ideally you have less than 1,500 cars per day. And so on the 4M route, for all sections of it, there, I believe the average daily traffic is above 2,500 and close to 3,000. So we do have some sections of the 4M route that will have sharrows, but that's only because those sections are narrower and there wasn't space to put in bike lanes. So we wanted to put in bike lanes wherever there was enough space, just to make it safer for folks riding bikes with that next to that many cars.
Thanks, Nicole. Daniel, I see your hands up. I think you had that question too.
Yes, I completely understand that, because during the pandemic, I started biking a lot more, and it's Mill Main specifically is my access to Parkland Park. And I know for my neighbors as well, I guess I just was wondering if it's such a big concern, maybe we should just implement some type of neighborhood greenway thing.
Thanks. Yeah. I think, yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. Jenny, I saw you, maybe I'll pass the mic over to you. I saw you sort of had a question about, you know, sort of, is there a bigger picture we're missing? But I'll let you share.
Sure. I just had a string of questions as they were coming up. I'm going to open the chat so I can remember what they are.
Yeah, I can just read it here if you prefer. You know, more info on the number of bike commuters, where are they coming from, targets, and why is there a push for Greenway along Mill Main, and is there a bigger picture we're missing? I mean, I think,
Right. Yeah. So generally just asking like, what is this push for the Greenway in this area? And like, if there's just more information you guys can share with us on like, you know, what is the future of this Greenway trying to accomplish? And, you know, why is there Greenway in this area? Like who's biking, you know, things like that. And then like, where are they coming from and to? And then I think the last question I had was, when will these parking changes be implemented?
great questions. I think maybe I'll take a stab at the sort of like the bigger picture, which is, you know, as Nicole mentioned in the sort of the introduction, the street network in the Centennial neighborhood doesn't have a lot of what we call connectivity. You know, it's fairly disconnected. So we don't have a lot of options for making it a really for a lot of easy, like straightforward options for creating a connected and cohesive cycling network. But what you see us trying to do here is to do our best to make it so that folks who do choose to bike or would like to choose to bike to get around have some options that connect them to other facilities, other streets that are good for cycling, and just give people some options for getting to the park or to the school by bike. You know, one thing that we've learned from building bike facilities, you know, throughout the city is people don't tend to bicycle until the facilities exist. You know, it's like until you see those bike lanes or multi-use paths, you know, it's not very like you know, as we were hearing from neighbors, it's like, you know, if you've got drag racing on your street, it's not a very enticing place to ride a bicycle. So those are the, you know, we're not necessarily building these types of improvements for people who are biking out there today. We're trying to create an environment where more people, hopefully some of you, will feel like, oh yeah, I could see biking to the park and having a picnic there, and that with these improvements. In terms of like when parking changes will be implemented, you can kind of look to these lines, I think is probably the easiest way to think about that. So the stuff in green will be completed by the end of this summer, and the stuff in pink will be completed by early 2023. And then the final piece will be that multi-use path on the south side of Park Lane Park, and that will occur in 2023.
I see that Jeremy has his hand up again, but before we jump to him, I just kind of wanted to touch on, piggyback off of what you said around biking. As all of us know, living out here, you know, we do not have sidewalks. People are driving really fast. I personally live within half a mile of the park, but do not walk there, do not bike there, do not take my daughter there unless I get in my car or my dog there because of the lack of safety. So I just kind of want to piggyback off what Gabe said around, you know, building the infrastructure so that we can do that. I mean, nearly every other part of the city has these options of biking, whether it's to get to work, to get to the Rosewood Community Center, to get to a park, or just a leisure family, you know, trip. And many of us, if not all of us, I would argue, don't have those options because of the lack of safety to bike. I will say also, outside of the back of Rosewood, we do have a bike shop. It's a low barrier bike shop. It's by pair. Bike Works by Pair. They're actually moving with us to the 141st and Stark, and they're going to be building out a more robust bike shop. And a lot of the work that they've been doing is around bike access. And a lot of our program participants have greatly benefited from that, because you do have the Portland, what's the right term? The Portland thought around biking, and it's, a very downtown bike to work type of culture, and really blowing that up, that any of us can bike. Just because we're not biking from inner Southeast to downtown doesn't mean we can't bike and enjoy it and have a great time. So not assuming you didn't know all that, but I just kind of wanted to add to the conversation around biking. And it's important that all of us as Outer East Portland residents have options that, every other Portlander has. And so maybe we want to pick up biking, maybe we want to walk for our health and our wellness and all of those things. So I think it's important to introduce these different plans and ways of transportation, so that we can be connected to each other and have access to these, great improvements. But I see Jeremy has his hand up, and I also saw something in the chat about potentially like 2-hour parking or limited parking during specific times. So maybe that's what you're going to talk about. So I'll pass it over to you.
Well, yeah, what Sabrina just said, and like, I mean, it's a small thing. I understand you're trying to connect connectivity, but you've kind of like voided family gatherings, evening family gatherings, when we're not going to have lots of people going by anyways on bikes. I mean, that's not the culture yet. And so if there could be evening parking on the street, or, I mean, just figure out some way to be flexible, because banning parking is really heavy-handed. And honestly, I think it's going to have virtually no strategic benefit. Now, if you're taking away parking in front of my house, you could put in a swale to deal with the flooding issue that we're having in the street. Okay, that I would at least understand. It's a strategic benefit. This design, removing parking on both sides of the street, just feels like here's a spreadsheet and we're going to cram everything through because that's what the spreadsheet says. It doesn't feel like anybody in the neighborhood actually supports it. Check.
Yeah, I think I hear you, Jeremy. I think Nicole and I are often in this, in transportation generally, we're often in this really tough position of trying to balance what you like what I would want for the street in front of where I live versus what the people who use that street, it's like, it's not just my street, it's like the people drive on it to get to work, people, transit uses it to, it's like the thing that I want for like right in front of my house is not always what the person who uses the street every day for their commute wants. And we're always just trying to balance those two things to try and come up with something that feels like is the best for all Portlanders, I guess. I recognize the removal of on-street parking right in front of your house, is an impact. And I guess what we're trying to do is balance. We're not. We're trying to really do our best to only have those impacts where we feel like the benefits outweigh the individual impact. So we're trying our best to balance those.
Yeah, no, I just directly reply. I mean, I get there's the budget constraints and like, or how do you fit all these things together? And we have all these disparate parts that don't necessarily fit together very well, because this part of town was not designed with walking or biking even considered. So I walk several miles a day with my very rambunctious large dog and in the neighborhood. And also my concern about taking away parking on the street is like, sorry, I've personally avoided being hit because I ducked behind a car because there was somebody speeding. And even, yes, the number of speeders, number of idiot drivers has gone down with adding the speed bumps on Main Street, but it's certainly not zero. And it's, I would just, I think if you take away parking on both sides of the streets is really going to create a lot of resistance. I mean, even taking away parking on one side of the street, because a lot of people use it like that's how they live. And you start removing that, and then people start worrying about catalytic converters being cut out of their car because they don't have eyes on the car. In this neighborhood, I understand the problems of retrofitting, but this is going to create a lot of resistance for later change. And climate change is going to be making all of our lives very interesting in the wrong kind of way. and figuring out how to manage that change going forward is critical. Thank you. Jack.
So I'm just going to jump in real quick, and I want to make some room for anybody else who has comments. I think, what I'm hearing as the major concern coming out of this meeting is that strip, that there's no parking on either side. I think that that's well heard by Transportation Bureau. And I think at this point, it's just a matter of, okay, what is the decision? Like, you've heard this input and you've heard this feedback, from people who are living on the street, kind of what's the final decision around that. And so I just want to make some room for other folks. I see Rob has their hand up. I know there's a couple more comments that have come in the chat. So I just want to make sure that we make space for that as well in this time. So Gabe, I don't know if you want to jump to Rob or see what's in the chat. I'll let you kind of do that.
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead, Rob. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of pile on with the no parking thing, but I do have another question. I have noticed since everything that they've done on Division to make that street so undesirable and so unsafe, it has picked up traffic probably at least 50% on Mill Main, because there's no reason that everybody avoids Division like the plague, because it's dangerous. I've lived here for 30 plus years. I drive down that street. I know where it is. I know, I drive down it often, and it is like, I feel like I'm at Disneyland on those cars where you're driving, you cut over here, cut over there. I mean, I was always taught, the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. And that street is a perfectly straight street. And yet before you get to the end of it, you've went back and forth. So anyway, that's a whole nother topic, but I'm sure you folks have the statistics before what was done on Division was done on our street, as far as how that impacted our street. How many more cars are going down Mill Main, because the most of this traffic and making Mill Main unsafe has been increased because of what was done on Division.
Thanks for sharing that, Rob. That's an interesting observation. I'm sure we have traffic counts that we could look at from when we were starting the project, probably several years worth on Mill Main, and it wouldn't hurt to get new data to see if that traffic has kicked up. We also, go ahead, Rob.
And I don't expect that you have those stats there, right, with you in front of you to see what the differences were, but I would be real curious to find that out. And then I guess, where would I find that information out at? Because that's like a key to what's made this street so horrible. I mean, I've got Ring cameras, I've got regular cameras on the street that literally you could sit there and look at the front of my house, and there is not 5 minutes that goes by of the 24-hour clock that a car is not driving by. In the afternoon, it's like a freeway out there. And whether the cars are going the speed limit or not, it's just the sheer volume of cars. And these people that drive by here, they're not local in this area. It's just Division is so horrible that it's diverted all the traffic down Mill Main, because guess what? You can go from 148th all the way to 162nd without stopping, yes, you do have to curve with the road, but you don't have, chunks of cement sitting out in the middle of the road that you could hit very easily. And if we could get those statistics, that would be great to see how big of an increase our street has actually seen. Because I would bet that it's at least 50% or more than what it was 5 years ago or 3 years ago. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Rob. I pasted a link in the chat where you can see all of our traffic count data. Let me know if you have any issues with the link. So you can sort of look back at the data we already have. And then I don't want to speak for Nicole, but I think we'd be happy to get a traffic count for Mill Main. And it may make good sense to do a before and after of once we get the speed bumps in, to see how that's impacting. We can look at both the number of cars that are on the street and also the speed at which they're traveling. Make sure that we're having the impact that we'd like to see.
Yeah. I spotted a couple questions about sidewalks, and yeah, that's, when I was doing outreach for these projects, that's what you hear all the time, right? We want sidewalks, we want sidewalks. Sidewalks are expensive, but somebody asked, will there be a sidewalk connecting the church and school to 162nd? There is like one gap in the sidewalk there, and none of these projects will be doing that piece of sidewalk, but there's another project coming soon on 162nd. And as part of that project, they'll be filling that sidewalk gap. And then in addition, the 4M project at the west end of this project, so starting at 136th, will be all along the north side. We'll be doing sidewalk infill from 136th to the high school. And then there's another few blocks. I think it's, I might be getting my streets wrong. Maybe it's 130th. 130th. So when the project's done, we'll have a continuous sidewalk on the north side of Mill from 130th to 139th. And I think the idea is, as we can, get funding through the years, that is a goal to, eventually have sidewalk on the north side for the entire length of, Mill, Main.
Thanks, Nicole. Sherry, I saw you had your hand up.
I just wanted to share that the information about who you contact about the division work.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the chat. So if anyone's concerned about that, please do look and talk to her. Or if you need the information she sent me today, I'll be glad to forward it to you. Let me know.
Thanks, Sherry. I appreciate that. Daniel, do you have another question or something to add?
I forgot what I was going to ask.
It's quite all right. If it comes back to you, just raise your hand again. Are there any questions or things that you were hoping that we would address that we didn't? Go ahead, Daniel, you got it?
Yes. How often do these bike lanes get sweeped? Because I noticed that some parts are very inaccessible just because of how much gravel and how much broken glass are on them.
Yeah, I'll acknowledge we do need to do a better job of street sweeping in general, particularly for our bike facilities. If there's a particular location
No, it's not the church. It's a meeting about the community. Did you eat dinner? Yes.
Sherry, I think you're unmuted. We can hear you.
A couple. Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, if there's if you're walking or biking along or driving along and you see a pile of glass that needs to get cleaned up, we do have a way for you to report that, and that's actually helpful for you to do. PDX reporter, I'll put the website in the chat.
Or you can call 311, and that's kind of the clearinghouse for those kinds of calls, and they'll route your call.
Nice.
Oh, well, along those lines, Gabe, are you ready for me to take back host and then I can manage the muting and everything? Or would you like to continue to show your screen?
I'd be happy to stop sharing my screen.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to reclaim host then. And I guess I did also just want to sort of interject, everybody is here. This is a great attendance for what started as a CCA meeting, a Centennial Community Association meeting. So this time is typically reserved for CCA to meet. So thank you to the CCA for, putting this time toward this topic. And thank you again to Sabrina. One of the pieces that I'm interested in talking about is how we as neighbors I haven't reclaimed host yet, darn it, can continue to communicate about issues like this that come up and talk to each other and also get accurate information from the different city bureaus. So if PBOT or Parks has any input on like where the right place to go is for us, or any suggestions that you have on how we could just improve ongoing communication so things don't come as a surprise in the future, I would love to talk about that a little bit, kind of the soft side of this this situation, and how to improve going forward.
Yeah, definitely. The first step would be to go to either put your email in the chat and we'll add you to the email list for those projects. And that'll definitely, during construction, we'll be sending out more, we're going to be in front of these blocks this week, et cetera, type updates. Yeah, I mean, we're interested, for the 4M project, I had a couple open houses. I went to Hazelwood's Neighborhood Association. I think I tried to contact Centennial and never got a response back. It's, people aren't always interested in transportation in general if they don't know how it's going to impact them. So sometimes it's hard to get people to come to these meetings. People have lots of things they'd rather be doing with their, Tuesday evenings. So that's why I mentioned earlier, I mean, we're open to creative ways. Like, what do you guys think is the best way for us to get input from you? Short of those traditional, neighborhood association open houses.
I can say from my end, I know we've partnered with many bureaus, specifically Parks and Recreation. I will say we have a little bit of a different audience than those that are in this room. But with that being said, anyone in this room is welcome to, follow the Rosewood Initiative on Facebook or Instagram, or sign up for our newsletter. And anytime, government entity or anything like that kind of shares information on what's going on, we try to get that information out. Again, we have a little bit of a different focus than maybe the neighborhood association, but we do tend to partner a lot. I try to attend as many meetings as I can. So consider Rosewood a resource as well for anyone in this room to get connected with those that they're looking to get connected with. I think I see Jeremy unmuted.
Well, it was in regards to the community outreach and like how to engage. Because the maps, for future projects, like having the maps online, because like I would get feedback from a neighbor saying one thing, I would check the City of Portland's website, and I do websites for my day job, and the information I found did not accurately represent the project and was wrong for a number of years. So it's part of it's like this whole information architecture, because one of the main problems is like how to engage what's going on in the neighborhood, because it's not about the parts, it's how you put them together, and hearing how certain things fit or not. Like, I don't know. I mean, if a bike transportation engineer want to make the case why shutting down both parking on both sides of Mill Main the entire stretch, not just my chunk in front of my house, was necessary, I would want to talk through the design rather than kind of like, surprise, here you go. Because yes, this was created as a project, but 4M project, the Greenway was like started like 12 years ago. So it personally makes me a little reticent to like, sure, yes, I like this project if we don't know when it's going to be happening. Because otherwise it's kind of a law of surprise that you're just going to pop up at the most like, wait, what is this thing? Because the neighborhood has changed a lot in that period of time. So it's not about the parts, it's how you put them together and the relationships that we dance with, because stuff happens. Thank you.
Sherry?
Well, I want to commend you for at least trying to talk with the community, because where I sit here and what's impacting me with division, there was no communication whatsoever about what was going to happen at the front of our street. And I did, talk with the city today and the person, and I know, but it's after the fact. And we were assured by the people doing construction at the front of the street, no, we're not going to put some barriers up, but yes, there's a barrier up. So caution to the people that are advocating here, continue to do so. And warm invitation for all of you attending tonight to be part of the Centennial Community Association. We would be happy always to, you know, be part of publicizing information. We're trying to become much more active. So you can, I put my contact information in there. You can contact me. Dan is our president, and thank you.
I'm wondering if there's anyone who hasn't had the chance to speak that maybe just has any general comments or question. I just want to make sure. I know everybody has different levels of, comfortability asking questions and talking in these type of spaces. So I just want to pause for a moment and just see if there's anyone who hasn't had the chance to kind of say anything that has anything to say, or questions or anything really at all.
There's also some questions in the chat still.
What question do you see? Could you maybe point one out?
Sure, the latest one is asked, when Park Lane closes for construction, are parents and kids walking around the park on sidewalks or multi-use path?
And actually that's hooked to a previous question, which was just the alignment of the parks. Well, I think you showed it in your slide, but did everybody feel clear on the staging of when the parking changes are going to happen and when the park changes are going to happen based on the presentation tonight? And how those kind of fit together?
No. Yeah, no. Oh, so sorry. I'm still hanging on here. I'm like the last hanger on her. I don't think that was clear.
Maybe we could just really quick timeline again, and especially that the parks, since we've got our parks folks here, maybe also that maybe revisiting the capacity of the parking lots that are going to be at the park as best as we can understand, and how they relate to the parking changes on the street. I think one of the concerns that came up originally was that there seemed to be a mismatch between the size of the parking lots and then the amount of parking that would be removed. And I know that's now going to change with the LID, but maybe just a little more parks timeline.
And I think it'd be great if you could follow up after the fact with like a visual or something that we can look at so we can remember and reference later. But yeah, Maya, thank you.
Yeah. Let's see. So we want to answer about the parks timeline with this construction as well. I'm not clear on that 100% myself. Sandra, can you speak to that? Or PBOT, about the timing of the PBOT construction? I think I missed that detail.
Yeah, this is Sandra. So the park is anticipated to start construction next spring, right around a year from now. And it will finish in the fall of 2024.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit, please, because the park was supposed to like finalize in the fall of 2022. So we have to reach out to our community and say that that's not happening.
Yeah, so we just updated our project advisory committee meeting, project advisory committee last week. Actually, Sabrina was there, so we did an update to them. I just updated the website this week, and I'm going to be sending out an email to the project list later this week. And then we'll also be getting some updated signage on site with some QR codes pointing folks to the website so they can get more information. As you can imagine, the pandemic's had some significant impacts on the park project. The biggest being the significant kind of escalation costs of construction. So we've had to spend some additional time doing additional design work to accommodate that. You can imagine, you're seeing supply chain issues, cost of labor, fuel, everything that your own household bill is expanding. That's had huge impacts on the park design. So been working through. Yeah, so been working through that. And then also there's just some challenges, things like building on top of a quarry that's been filled in, we had to kind of move some things around in the design so that we weren't adding more cost to the project of building things on top of a slightly unstable surface. So things like you can imagine like a hard court, like a basketball court, a tennis court, you don't want to put on some surface that's going to go over time because you're going to end up with a court like this, right? So we've been had to kind of extend out the design period, spend more time on that. And so that's, led to some delays in the start of construction. As folks have seen though, the last year and then again this year, we're beginning some kind of early construction work where you're seeing a lot of soil movement onto the quarry site. And we were actually able to get some cost savings in the project by that. We're saving about $750,000, which is pretty crazy just on dirt, because we've been able to bring in dirt from other city project sites. Like right now, the Water Bureau last summer was doing a project up at Pal Butte. So that was good, clean soil that Water Bureau would have otherwise just had to dump somewhere. Instead, they were bringing it into our site to help bring
Yeah,
in
apparently Pal Butte dumped soil to the Parkland Park.
Yeah, so we've been working through some of those things this
Oh,
year. You'll see some more soil getting moved on site, and also you'll see some really large, huge piles of gravel they're going to build, basically make some big piles in the quarry, and that's going to help with some of the soil compaction that's happening in the site. And that will prepare so that we have a good, stable site for putting in some of the structures like the picnic shelter and covered area in the northern part of the park. So I can put a link in a minute to the webpage with the kind of the updates, explaining some of these different issues we're working through. It just was very complicated, as you can imagine, kind of working through all these design things. We were able to get a little bit of funding added on to the project as well from our commissioner to kind of bridge that gap that we were seeing in costs. So we know it's been, again, kind of a long time in communicating, but we're trying to work out through all of the design challenges before we could come out, because we didn't want to come out and say, we don't know what we're doing. We wanted to come out, to be able to update the community. We've kept all of the major program elements within the park. You'll just see there's some kinds of shifts of where things are located based from what we last shared. And then Sandra and I haven't talked extensively about this kind of start of construction and access for pedestrians. So we'll have to get back to you, I think, about that, unless Sandra, you have something to add about that.
Yeah, not exactly.
Wait,
we will have
so my deal is not about access.
Mm-hmm. Somebody
No,
had a question about access that I was responding to.
They may have back in the meeting. No, my deal is about the 2009 park thing that was supposed to happen back in Parkland Park. And I understand that there are all kinds of things that have happened. I understand that pandemic has made it shitty and all that. I want a park for my people.
I feel you.
And it seems like everybody in the city has a park. And I used to live in the city and I know that. And I just want a really good park. So
I agree. Yeah, no, I mean, a lot of East Portland neighborhoods, particularly this neighborhood, have waited way too long to see a city park. I'm actually similarly working on a project over at Mill Park, just off of 122nd. And, we have, documents from 1974 talking about the park planning there. And today there's a, worn walking path and a memorial bench at the park and nothing else. And so, I deeply apologize because it is frustrating. Like, I've been working on this project since about 2018. I think I started working on it, and I'm frustrated. I want to be opening that park with you all. Like, that's the best part of my job, the day we get to, cut that ribbon. So I know it's deeply frustrating that, the thing that we were working really hard on was we didn't want to deliver an incomplete park. That was why we had to spend extra time figuring out design, figuring out the costs, figuring out all these things we had to work around. These, we were seeing huge cost escalation coming in where we were like, we can't quit on this project. We had to go and make a case to our director and our commissioner that we needed additional funding so we could even meet this gap, even after all these creative design solutions, saving money by hauling in dirt from other sites. Like Sandra and other folks on the team have worked incredibly hard to really follow through on delivering a park that doesn't make you all feel like, oh, we only got half the park that we wanted, because of these cost escalations. So
I'm just going to jump in real quick because we are at 6:52. Wow.
Okay. Sorry.
No need to apologize at all. But I do see 2 hands up and they've been up for a little while. Karen put some follow-up information in the chat. And so I think that would be another great place. Maybe message, I don't want to put Karen out there, but maybe message Karen if there's like some follow-up things that she might be able to compile to PBOT and Parks? Okay, thanks. I totally just assigned that to you without even asking. So thank you for taking that graciously. But Dan and Karen, and then Rob, and then we have 7 minutes. So hopefully there's enough time to get those questions in. So Dan and Karen.
You won't go, there it is. Okay, my question is on the design where you have a sidewalk on one side and no sidewalk on the other. And if my memory serves me correctly, because I don't live in the neighborhood, there's a school on the east side of the park. Do residents and school kids walk along that road to get to that school? And if they live on the south side, and you have to forgive me, I don't know if there's sidewalks on the south side at all, but if those sidewalks end, is there a way for them to cross safely to the north side to get to a sidewalk? Like, is there a crosswalk there? Or is there a planned crosswalk there? And because I see it on 174th where I live, where there are very few sidewalks, and the kids play Russian roulette trying to cross the street. Because 174th is very busy during rush hour, and you can't really say, okay, they only get so much traffic during the day, but when does that traffic occur? So maybe there needs to be some precautions for safety for kids and parents pushing carts, because I can't see those unsidewalked areas on the south side of the street are probably going to get foot worn. And no grass growing, they're going to turn into mud. So do they want to walk on the mud, or would they prefer to cross and walk on the sidewalk? So that's all I'm saying, is safety on the part of the kids trying to get back and forth, and the people trying to get to the park for that matter.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
So there are no sidewalks on the south side. There will be a marked crossing across Millmain at the kind of, where the park comes down into the point of the V there. There'll be a striped sidewalk there. And, people can walk in the bike lanes. I mean, you all have mentioned how there aren't that many bikes out there. So, I would think if you were walking along, feel free to use the bike lanes and the bikes can go around you. So, I mean, think of that as your space as well if you're walking.
Hey, Rob, you get the last question.
Yeah, I guess I was just going to chime in on the park, because I know that there's been multiple plans for the park and everybody has had their input. And now from what I'm hearing is that they're going to have to tweak things around to make the budget work for this. And I guess I would question who is doing the thinking that says the longer we delay this, it's not going to get cheaper. It's just going to get more and more money it's going to cost. So are we going to have this same conversation a year from now saying we had to push it out because it's too expensive and we don't have the funding? I mean, bite the bullet and do it. My taxes keep going up every year, year after year. I don't have a sidewalk in front of my house. I'm now going to no longer have parking in front of my house, and my taxes just keep going up and up and up. As well as I voted for the Parks Initiative, all the ones that have been on ballot measures to feed all this stuff. And it's just like the money's going into an endless vacuum and all we're hearing is we don't have enough money to do it. So I'll close at that.
Thanks, Rob. And Maya, to my understanding, I know we just had an update meeting, but all the elements are there, right?
Yeah.
No elements were lost.
Yeah,
Correct?
I mean, there's a few changes. We've eliminated the artificial turf soccer field, and so now it's just a grass soccer field. So we made some cost changes like that, but overall, the major elements like soccer fields, picnic shelters, playground, dog park, skate park, all those kinds of features, basketball courts, et cetera, are still in the plan. And so we'll be going into permitting soon, and then doing some more bidding in the fall, and then going into construction. So we're moving forward, Rob. We're not pausing. We're just doing the work one foot in front of another. It's just a process we have to go through. And this project is fully funded by system development charges, which is actually not taxpayer money, just to clarify. It's money that's paid by developers when they go and get a permit for a new single family house, multifamily business, commercial business. So this is specific development money that goes towards expanding our park system, paid by developers. So when you see a new house or new apartment go up, you can thank them for supporting our parks.
I'll close out in our last 2 minutes. I really want to first and foremost thank every one of my neighbors who showed up here, the Centennial neighborhood. This is what it's all about: community organizing, coming together, advocating for each other, advocating for our community and our youth and all of the things. And so I think that that's really great. Again, I'm going to give a special shout out to Karen, who asked me to step into this role to support this work. Again, I don't live right on the street, so I appreciate all of those very specific experiences that you all have. They're valid. But I'm, going to be a user of it. And so I appreciate all of your advocacy. I'm going to put a personal plug on 174th because I live right off of 174th. And that is a terrible tragedy waiting to happen. I hope that, I talk to every transportation person I can about 174th. So I know that it's on your radar. And so thank you all for being here. I thought that this was really respectful. Everybody gave their opinion. We heard multiple perspectives. And so I think this was really great show of what community can do and what East Portland is all about. Please follow up with me, with Rosewood, follow up with Karen, follow up with Centennial Community Association. It really takes all of us to envision the neighborhood, that we want and to improve the things that we love. And preserve the things that we love. You all have a great night.
Thank you, Sabrina, for your facilitation.
Absolutely. Eat some good food, eat some dessert.
Yeah. Thanks to you, neighbors. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks everybody.
everyone.
Appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Sabrina.
Bye, everyone.